So we just finished up our unit on North America, right? We had our test last week. Friday, you guys did some corrections on that. But before we begin our next unit is going to be on Latin America. So we're going to look at Central and South America. I have to do like a 3-part lesson as part of my student teaching process, right? This is the part where I'll be videotaping. Okay, I'm not going to be videotaping in this class, but I'll give the 3 lessons. So today, tomorrow, and Wednesday will be it'll be like a standalone unit, right? It'll just be those 3 days. We're going to be talking about some Industrial Revolution stuff, how that impacts agriculture, how that impacts the foods that we eat, and then we'll finish up looking at automation and how automation has changed jobs, right? What the future looks like because of the rise of AI and artificial intelligence, all those things. Okay, so this is going to be a standalone 3-day unit, and then on Thursday we'll begin our unit on Latin America. We'll start looking at the Inca Empire on Thursday. Okay, so we are going to take it back. Does somebody have a question? No? All right, so we are going to take it back a little, talk about some of the industrial revolutional concepts that we talked about a few weeks ago with our DBQs. So if we take it back, before the Industrial Revolution, what occupation did most people have, Derek?
Farmers.
Farmers. Okay, and so question 2 is, why did so many people have this job? Why was this such an important job? Derek?
For food.
For food, exactly. So before the Industrial Revolution, people are on these smaller farms, and they have to be farmers because we need food, right? A family farm cannot produce very much. So everyone has to be constantly growing food in order for us to have enough. But what we'll see through the Industrial Revolution is that changes. The amount that farmers can produce skyrockets compared to what it was before, and that allowed a lot of people to leave farming, right? What was that process that we called, the word that we used, where people went from living in rural areas to living in cities? Urbanization. Okay, so urbanization could only happen because of technological advances to farming. People were able to produce much more food, and that allowed people to leave the industry. Okay, so one of these innovations that we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about a couple specific ones, but one of the most important ones was the steel plow. Okay, was anyone able to find out who invented the steel plow? Laurel. I'm sorry, not Laurel. Go ahead, Charisma.
John Deere.
John Deere. Okay, so John Deere invented the steel plow. Does anyone know? Has anyone ever been up to Moline and gone to the John Deere factory? No? No? So John Deere, he was from Illinois, so he actually established his factory up in the Quad Cities. You can go tour it. It's kind of cool. Not worth the trip, in my opinion. But if you're ever up in the Quad Cities, go see it. It is cool. You can go climb around on their tractors and their combines and so on and so forth. But was anyone able to find why the steel plow was superior? Why it was such a big innovation? Why it had such an important impact? Austin?
Because the wooden ones kept breaking.
Okay, so wooden ones kept breaking. It's a much more durable piece of equipment. Okay?
And the dirt would stick to the cast iron one instead of breaking through here.
Exactly. So when you use cast iron, right, you're going through, what does a plow do first off?
Split the and roots and stuff.
Yep, so you're splitting the ground, right? You're cutting a field. And if you're using a cast iron, what's going to happen when that soil is wet is it's going to cling to the blade, right? It's not going to be a very efficient cut. It's going to take a lot of hard work, and you're going to be constantly having to scrape it off. Okay, you're going to have to clean off the blade, keep going. But what the steel plow does is it doesn't allow that dirt to stick. It's a much smoother surface, so you get a much cleaner cut. It's much more efficient. You can do a lot more in the day, right? So this greatly increased the amount of land that farmers could cultivate, and then once you were able to throw this plow onto a tractor, that really skyrocketed the amount that a farmer could do in a day. Okay, so that's what we're going to be talking about in our little lesson later on today. But first, does anyone have any questions about the bell work? Any questions about the 3-day unit, why we have to do it, what the purpose of it is, right? This probably won't be anything we're going to be tested over. We're just going to keep it confined within these 3 days. Sound good? All right, so go ahead and get out your bell work sheets, or not your bell work sheets, your word of the day sheets. We'll do that before we dive in. It is a busy week in sociology. All right, so our word today is the word deleterious. Okay, deleterious. This is actually a word that I had never heard of before, so this was a new word for me, so I thought it'd be a good one to utilize in class. Okay, so Doris, do you need a word of the day sheet? Do we have more? Does anyone else need a word of the day sheet? Thank you. All right. So the word deleterious, does anyone offhand know what it means? No? So the word deleterious means hurtful or harmful. Okay, something, it has a negative impact. It causes some type of negative consequence. Okay, the synonyms that we have on the board are damaging or detrimental. Okay, can we think of any other synonyms? Yes. Destruction. That's a good. Keep it that. Get 3 D words, right? Damaging, detrimental, destructive. That's good. What, Gabe? We can try for 3 Bs. Can you think of another B word that would be a good antonym? No? What do we think? Can we think of any other so we got, what do we got? 3 synonyms, so let's move on to the antonyms. Right? Gabe wants to try to get another B for the antonyms. Anybody got one? Better? Okay. Betterment? I think betterment would be a good one. Beneficial? Betterment? Anybody have another one? I can't think of another antonym. What? Born? I don't know if born would work. I think like helpful would be another antonym. It does not a B, one starts with a B, but that would be another antonym we could use.
Brightening. Bright.
Brighting?
Brightening.
Brightening. Brightening. Making it brighter and better. Okay, and then what do we think about for a part of speech? Right. Verb. Because it's an action. Okay, and then this week, did we have any word of the days last week? Did we do one? So I think last week, did we do our sequence of 3, where you have to have either 3 adjectives, 3 verbs, 3 nouns? Okay, so we're going to be continuing with that. Doris, essentially, within the sentence, you just have to have 3 things one after another. So the example would be like wind, rain, and flooding. That's 3 consecutive. Sorry, what? Oh, what was your question?
How is it a verb?
How is it a verb?
It doesn't make
So
sense.
I think it's an adjective.
Oh, it probably is an adjective. I'm not very good at this. So it would be an adjective, right? It would be a descriptive term. Yeah, that makes more sense. All right. So then for our sentence context, so you guys know there's the Olympic Games coming up. Do we know where the Olympics are going to be at this summer?
I think we're in.
It is not in Qatar. That's the World Cup. That's the soccer World Cup. Doris?
Japan.
Japan, right? So the Olympics are going to be in Tokyo this year. But what is going on in the world right now? What is something that might prevent the Olympics from happening? The coronavirus, right? So as we're getting closer and closer to the Olympic Games this summer, and as the corona outbreak continues to grow, right, where we haven't gotten a good grasp on the coronavirus, they're starting to, Tokyo, where the Olympic Games are being held, is starting to worry about how it's going to impact them. And recently, there was a marathon that is scheduled to take place the first week of March that was kind of like a preliminary run before the Olympics, and Tokyo has canceled that marathon. Okay, they were expecting 38,000 people to come into town and run this marathon, and they have said we're not going to let it happen, right? Only elite marathon runners are going to be allowed. So they're drastically reducing the number of people who can participate in this marathon. And this is not the first sporting event that's been canceled because of coronavirus. There's been several events throughout China and throughout Southeast Asia that they're having to cancel because they're worried about large groups of people all getting together, right? People coming from all over the world, and they're worried about what the impact, how the virus might impact that. Okay, so we're going to be utilizing that as our sentence context. How coronavirus is a global pandemic, how it's spreading around the world, how airplane travel helps it transmit, how we might have to cancel the Olympics, because that's a very serious question. If we don't have a grasp upon this pandemic by the time the Olympics roll around, what are we going to do? Are we going to cancel it, or are we going to allow it and perhaps allow it to impact more people? Okay, so again, you're doing your rule of three within your sentence, and we're going to use the Tokyo Olympics and the coronavirus as our sentence context. Then once you are done, go ahead and share your sentence with the people around you, right? The person in front and the person behind.
Never mind, they have test scores for coronavirus. They have test
All right. Someone have a sentence to share with the class. Right, rule of three, use the word within the sentence. Austin, you got one to share?
Coronavirus is
Deleterious.
dangerous, and scary virus. Therefore, we might have to cancel the Olympics.
Cool. Got a capital at the beginning. Punctuation at the end. Right? Because that is with all our sentences. No matter what type of sentence we're doing, we got to make sure we have that. All right. So go ahead and get out your Chromebooks. Yeah, Mr. McGinnis.
I have one.
You got one? Let's hear it.
Due to the coronavirus, Tokyo believes that allowing the Olympics to continue could be deleterious, dangerous, and unhealthy for tourists and visitors.
There you go. Good stuff. All right, so go ahead and get out your Chromebooks. We're going to be utilizing Nearpod for the slides. So remember, Nearpod is the one where the slides will get projected on your screen. So if you go to Mr. Miller's website, you can find the class code under the Global Cultures tab. Down there on the bottom right. Okay, that's the 5-digit code you'll utilize to get into the presentation. And then once you get in, once you input the code, it should ask you to just put your name. Just go ahead and put your first name. First name is sufficient. Okay, and as you guys get in, I'm going to come around and hand out a chart, and this is what we'll be using to take notes. Okay, we'll just be filling out this chart, so you won't need a notebook. You'll just need something to write with. Yeah, so we'll be utilizing that, and then we'll just take some notes on that. All right, who has not been able to access Nearpod? Just Miranda Torin. What? Yeah, Derek.
I'm entering the code and I'm forwarding it out.
Did you?
Highlight the space.
That's right.
Yeah, but that's too
Alright, Miranda, were you able
He
to
took
get
my
it?
Chromebook.
Alright.
He's not helping. He made it worse.
Oh, I did.
Well, it didn't work.
Maybe just keep trying.
You just said delete it.
Alright, so if you haven't been able to get in yet, refresh your computer, refresh your screen, but we gotta get started if we're gonna get into everything. So everybody got a graphic organizer, the little handout. Sorry. So essentially all we're doing today is we're gonna look at what were some industrial innovations, some industrial technologies that changed how people farm. Okay, because remember before most people were farmers and we needed those farmers in order to produce enough food, but now we don't, right? Not everyone engages in farming and farmers are able to produce more than enough food, right? We have food surpluses. So we're trying to figure out what caused this. So within your organizer, we're basically just going to look at, I think it's 5 specific inventions. We're going to put down what was the purpose, what are they trying to do with this invention, and then how is this applied to agriculture? How did farmers utilize these technologies? Okay?
Yeah, moving. Slide.
Stop making the noise.
Alright, so if we're looking at farming before the Industrial Revolution, right, we answer with the bulwark that a majority of people are farmers, right? I believe somewhere around like 90% of all people before the Industrial Revolution engaged in farming activities. Okay, and most of these farms, they were very small, and they're what we call self-sufficient. Okay, does anyone know what that word self-sufficient means?
They like help themselves and they can keep their food.
They provide for themselves. Okay, so a farmer at this time, they would grow their own food. They would grow the food required for their animals, right? Everything they made was kept within the confines of that farm. They would drink the milk that their cows produced. They would eat the meat from the livestock they produced. They would grow food for the animal. They didn't go out and buy things, right? If you needed it, you made it yourself. Okay, and they grew many diverse types of foods. So you had one field with wheat, one field with corn, one field with oats, because you had to grow food for not only yourself, but you had to grow food for your animals. And you would keep a diverse group of animals, right? You might have cows, pigs, chickens, and horses. You had several different varieties because of, again, that self-sufficient nature. You needed all of those things. Okay, Ms. Miller, can you click? Whoop.
I didn't do what we wanted to do.
There we go. So if we look, this is a picture of what a typical farm before the Industrial Revolution would have looked like. Okay, it is a piano. Why the piano is there, I do not know. It must be their most prized possession. I would assume they're very proud of their piano. But what we want to look at is we want to look at the animals, right? You'll notice that there's not very many of them. Okay, these farms are rather small. They don't have very large amounts of animals because a large amount of animals would take a lot of food. It would not be efficient to have 100 cows when you only need to have 2 cows. Okay, so these farms are very small, and you'll notice that there's many different types of animals, right? All within that pen, there's cows, there's chickens, there's pigs, there's horses. There's a lot of different, it's a very diverse setting, and it's a rather small farm. Okay, a typical farm at this time, they would have farmed about 40 acres. Okay, that's about as much as a single family could handle. Okay, but what we're going to notice, think about a modern farm. Okay, do modern farms have this diverse approach to animals, or do modern farms focus more on one animal over the other? One animal over the other, right? So we're seeing a change in the types of animals we're doing. Are farms today self-sufficient? Do they grow the food for their animals, or do they buy the food for their animals? They buy the food for their animals, right? Do they grow their own food? Right? Do most corn farmers eat the corn that they grow, or does that corn go to alternate uses? Alternate uses, right? So these are all changes, things that have shifted around agriculture, and so we're going to dig in and try to figure that out. Okay, Mr. Miller? All right, so the first innovation, this is the first one in that graphic organizer, this would be the steel plow. Okay, so the purpose of this plow is to help till farm ground, to help make a field able to produce for you. Okay, so you go through and you plow the field, you make your rows, right? You break up the ground. A lot of farmers at this time, they were working on big prairie ground. Okay, and you can't just go and plant seed in a prairie. You have to till up the soil. You have to churn up the dirt a little bit, break it apart. So that is the purpose of the plow, is to break apart dirt, break apart rocks, and make the ground easily accessible for seeds, right? You have to put in the work on the front end, and you use the plow. And how this changed farming is because with the steel plow, remember we talked about how it was more efficient. Now if you're using a steel plow, you can have much larger fields. You can create a bigger field, and one single farmer can farm more ground. Okay, it's not going to take as much work to plow the field if they're utilizing this machinery, if they're utilizing this invention. And then also imagine once you put this onto a tractor. Okay, a plow is something that can be pulled either by a horse or an oxen, but then once the tractor is invented, you can attach a plow to it. And what is that going to do to the amount of ground that you can farm? You can farm way more, right? If you have a tractor, you're going to be able to do way, way more work than if you're relying on horses. Okay, so the steel plow allowed farms to get much bigger. It allowed farmers to produce much more food. Okay, so that is the way that this changed agriculture. Okay? The next one we're going to talk about is the mechanical reaper. Right? Now, we might have talked about this a little bit in our DBQs on the Industrial Revolution. But does anyone know what a reaper is? What the purpose of the mechanical reaper is? Gabe.
Is it like to harvest faster, like a combine or something?
Exactly. Think of it like a combine. Okay, this is for harvesting. So before, if you wanted to harvest, you would have to go out and you would have to do it by hand. You would either get like a sickle, or you'd get something to cut the crop with, right? Imagine you have wheat. You have to go out there and by hand, you have to cut it down, and then by hand, you have to collect it. But what the mechanical reaper did was it made machinery cut the grass or cut the crop, whatever it was. No longer were you doing this by hand. Now you can use a machine. Okay, and with a machine, same thing with the plow, you can do a lot more work. It does not take you nearly as long to harvest when you're using a mechanical reaper, so now you can increase the amount of land you're farming. Okay, it allows, just like the plow, allows farms to get much bigger. Okay, and thinking about what we know about urbanization and how people are moving away from the cities, this is one of the reasons why not everyone had to be a farmer. Okay, these two and the tractor that we'll talk about in a moment allowed farms to get much, much bigger. So rather than having everyone be a farmer, now one farmer might be able to produce for a whole city, right? Where it used to take the entire townspeople working together to grow food, now you can have one individual do the work of many. Okay, and just like with the plow, the mechanical reaper can be attached to a tractor. Okay, it can be pulled by horses, it can be pulled by oxen, which is going to greatly increase the amount you can work. But if you throw that thing on the back of a tractor, you're going to be able to get way, way more done in a day. You're going to be able to harvest way more. You're going to be able to have more ground. It's going to be more productive. Okay? The next one is the tractor itself. Okay, think about trying to farm before there was a tractor. Okay, all the work either had to come from yourself or it had to be done by animals. Okay, imagine what are the limitations on a horse? Can you work a horse 24/7? No, you got to give a horse time to rest. You also have to provide that horse with food. Right? If you're relying on horsepower, like true horsepower, you have to grow the food that horse is going to need. Do you have to grow food for a tractor? No. Okay, so the tractor allows you to A, you can work much longer hours, and B, it doesn't take nearly as much effort to keep that tractor going, right? You're not having to feed and water the tractor. You're just having to buy the fuel that it's required. So the purpose of the tractor is to A, it allows farmers to use mechanical power rather than animal or human power. But then B, it allows you to haul things. Okay, you can throw a wagon on the back of it and you can use it to transport your goods, right? You can use it to transport animals. You can use it to transport other heavy machinery. Okay, and this was applied to farming at the time. Up here it reads, 1 man cultivates 2 rows at a time. This decreases the amount of work farmers are having to do, right? You use your plow or your mechanical reaper with a tractor, you're able to do much more during a day, allowing you to build a bigger farm, to grow more food, to produce more for society. Okay, our next two have to do not so much with farming, but they have to do more with food production, right? And this is related to farming because what is the main point of a farm? To grow food. Okay, so these are outside innovations that impacted farmers in a very specific way. So the first would be the rise of canning. Okay, so it might be kind of hard to conceptualize this, but there used to be a time when grocery stores only sold like 5 items. Okay, think about all the items that are at the IGA just down the street. You used to only be able to go to the grocery store and get like 5 items. They only sold 5 things because they didn't have the technology to preserve food. Okay, once canning was invented, the process of preserving foods, that allowed farmers to be able to sell their foods to market. Okay, if you grow green beans, you used to only be able to sell those green beans to the people around you. Now you can put those green beans in a can and you can ship them all the way across the country. You can ship them around the world. This leads to the globalization of agriculture. Now you can get products, you can make them travel much farther. You can ship them much farther and they're shelf stable. They can last a lot longer, right? You can get a canned food and you can use it years later. It's a great way to store foods. Okay, so this not only changed the type of foods that farmers were growing, but it changed the way that they were able to sell their foods. They're suddenly able to make much more money off of their foods because of these preservation techniques. Okay, canning allows you to preserve your food. You're able to sell to wider audiences. You're able to sell more products. And so that, again, leads to bigger farms, right? If you're able to make more money off your goods, you're going to invest more in your farm. You're going to build, or you're going to grow more for the next season because of that market, right? All of a sudden, you now can make a lot more money off of your products. Okay, and then the last one we're going to talk about is refrigeration. Okay, so refrigeration kind of goes along with canning. it's all about food preservation. Okay, so with refrigeration, it started out with railroad cars. Okay, they wanted to ship meat, right? Think about, have you guys, you know about like cowboys and how they used to go on the long cattle drives? Okay, have you guys heard of that? Think like Texas Longhorns, right? They used to drive cattle from Texas all the way up to Kansas City. But what refrigeration allowed you to do is now you could process meat and you could ship the processed meat. Rather than shipping a whole cow, you could process the cow and cut it up and then just ship the cut up bits. Okay, so all of a sudden you could take a cow from California, you could process it in California, and you could ship it to New York City. This refrigeration aspect allowed goods, non-perishable goods, or perishable goods rather, to be shipped across the country. So suddenly, all of a sudden, not just meat can be shipped, but fruits and vegetables. Okay, you can pick fruits and vegetables in California and again ship them to New York City. You can get goods and fruits and vegetables from Central America, South America, and you can ship them up to North America. Okay, think about when you go to the grocery store, can we get fruits and vegetables year round? Yeah, there's always going to be apples at the grocery store. Is it apple growing season right here, right now? No, so we have to go somewhere else to get our fruits and vegetables, and refrigeration is what allows that to happen. This act of preserving food, allowing it to be shipped across large areas of land. Okay, so those are the 5 agricultural technologies that really played a big hand in reshaping the way that we interact with our food, reshaped the way that farmers work, reshaped the need, or the whole point of being a farmer. And what this did was it created the factory food system. Okay, and that's where we're going to go for tomorrow. We're going to be talking about factory-produced foods and some of the health and environmental repercussions of that. Okay, so you guys can go ahead and put away your notes. We're going to finish today watching a clip from a documentary. Alright, has anyone ever seen the documentary called Food Inc.?